seat is a race between Democrat Josh Weil and Republican State Senator Randy Fine. Now, Republicans currently hold a razor-thin majority in the House with 218 seats, the exact number needed for a majority vote. But if both Republicans win in Florida, then Republicans jump ahead to 220 seats. Here with me now to discuss these elections in both states is the head pollster at Rasmussen, Mark Mitchell. Mark, thanks for joining America's Voice Live.
Yeah, really happy to be here. It'll be interesting to see what happens today.
Yeah, Mark, I want to talk first about the daily presidential tracking poll that you do. It looks like about 51% approve of Trump compared to about 48% disapprove and a -4 index. What are you seeing in this trend in your polling, especially when it comes to tariffs and the pinch that we might feel in the short run?
The trend is that over the last almost a decade, Donald Trump has convinced half the country to trust him. And so I think his approval rating is going to stay pretty much where you see it for the rest of his term, unless something either crazy good or crazy bad happens. Like, we're not in the scenario where a president's going to get a 60% anymore. It's just not going to happen. But I don't think Donald Trump gets into the low 40s like Biden was at either. He's just convinced people that he has the right platform and they trust him. And this is after a solid week of a fake information op to try and take him down, this whole signal gate thing. It had no effect, period, whatsoever. They're trying to craft a fake narrative of his plunge, and it's just not working.
So you saw no change whatsoever, even after the whole Signalgate situation? Nothing whatsoever? No dip?
Yeah, his approval index dropped a little bit. It's recovering some, strong approve minus strong disapprove. But everything they've thrown at this guy, only 38% of the country is, strongly disapproves of Donald Trump. That's about where it was in January of 2017. So everything hasn't worked at all.
Teflon Don, I guess that's why they call him that. Well, let's shift to the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, which we just talked about, which is a big one being held today. There's not a lot of polling on this election, but, we had it looked to favor Democrat Susan Crawford by maybe just a smidge. Both George Soros and Elon Musk view it as quite important, obviously. Soros got in on this election a long time ago. Tell us what you know about this race, and is it tougher, Mark, when Trump is not on the ballot?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And that's something that Republicans are going to have to come to terms with, because probably Trump's never going to be on the ballot again. And I'll tell you, I poll on J.D. Vance, and he does well, but just not as well as Trump. And listen, I think Republicans are scarred by some of the previous special elections they've seen in the past, like Loeffler and Warnock. And so there's a little bit of PTSD there. But yeah, not a lot of polls. I didn't get to go into the field either. And that's one of the problems Republicans also have, is that there's just not a lot of funding for public polling. The last one we saw was Trafalgar, actually, God bless him, went in there and showed that Schimmel was down 2 points. That's within the margin of error, but the previous polling has showed that he was going to be losing. But listen, all this really comes down to is you have so much money being thrown at this race, not only on the left, but apparently also the Republicans are stepping up, and there are tens of millions that have gone from national groups to this election. And also, you have Scott Pressler and the entire grassroots turnout machine doing their work. So literally at this point, the polling almost doesn't matter. The betting markets are convinced the Republicans going to lose, but it just comes down to who's got the better machine. And that's, something I just can't predict.
Well, what is your intuition then with Elon Musk putting so much effort into this race? I mean, we haven't seen that before. He gave two $1 million checks to these folks to raise grassroots awareness and flip the liberal Supreme Court. And I'm understanding, too, that this has major societal implications, because if you can flip that court, you can also flip the whole gerrymandering situation and redistricting there, too. So do you think that Elon Musk's presence will have an effect? I know you don't have a crystal ball yet, but could that actually be the deciding factor that could potentially flip the Supreme Court election?
Oh, absolutely. He's got an army of influencers that are working to try and win this. And I think that this is something very new, because I think back in Trump's first term, you really didn't see the Republican Party change that much because of Trump, in my opinion. And what I've heard over and over again, talking to MAGA candidates at a grassroots level, is well, we don't get any help from the top. An establishment candidate always gets the money. And here what you have is Elon Musk is building a major PAC. He's actually putting money into MAGA causes. And a way that just hasn't been done anymore. And if America First is going to stay the predominant, platform in the Republican Party, like there probably has to be a lot more of that because there's just so much establishment inertia. So if he's able to pull it out, this will be a really big win for him. And it's like, we knew they did a lot of grassroots in Wisconsin this time out, and Wisconsin was a surprise. Like Donald Trump outperformed our polling in Wisconsin, and so if he outperforms even again, like what Trafalgar says, then Elon will have a really big victory there.
Well, it's amazing to me that with all Elon's got going on, with what he's doing with Doge, he still has taken the time and effort to put into Wisconsin. I find that remarkable. And who knows, maybe Schimmel comes out victorious. Well, Mark, in Florida, in my home state here, we have these two special elections in the Gates and Walls districts. What is your polling telling you about these races?
Again, we didn't get into the field. I think Fabrizio did a poll with Florida District 6 and actually had the candidate up slightly, but these are like Trump plus 30 districts in Florida 1 and Florida 6. They should be no-brainers. I think they're going to be no-brainers. And what I'm watching on Twitter right now, I'm actually following Data Republican. The early turnout results are really strong, as everybody would expect them to be. So I think what we're seeing here is it's always really hard to poll congressional districts, and it's actually kind of more expensive than from a national perspective because you really have to go after everybody and call them and try and reach out to them to get enough results to have a meaningful sample. And so a lot of people just didn't do that. But listen, they've had problems polling Florida. Heck, I even underestimated Trump's turnout in Florida by a significant percentage. I think that's probably what's going on here. And we're going to see comfortable Republican wins. That's my guess. But yeah, not much polling, and it's really tough.
Well, it sounds like they're important races, too, in addition, of course, what's happening in Wisconsin. Well, Mark, for right direction, wrong track, your latest poll I was looking at seemed to show about 45% saying the country is headed in the right direction. Which, if you would, can you compare that to what this was a year ago?
100%. So this is the number to watch. People are going to think of what they think of Trump, and it's not going to change. But what's happening now is, for the very first time in all of our polling history, 19 years of asking this question, people are happier than they've ever been at the direction of the country. And that's because they elected a populist leader, and he's actually like upending the entire political situation in Washington, D.C. in a way that's been really bad for Americans up until now. Listen, we have right direction at 45% today. That's almost 10 points higher than it was in Obama's first term, when he was basically politics Jesus. And, other pollsters tend to sandbag Trump approval, but our right direction number matches up with others. We had NBC News, we had Marist, all at 44, 45%, saying the same thing. Higher than we've ever seen in our polling. We actually had it flip positive, more right direction than wrong track for the first time ever, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we're about to set a record, incredible, too, for contiguous weeks above 40.
Wow, that's exceptional. It just shows a lot of faith in what you just said, a populist leader, and doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Those promises made and promises kept, even amidst turmoil with tariffs and everything else. I want to ask you, too, about polling regarding Elon Musk, because we just talked about him as well in Wisconsin. Is it around the mid-40s? How do people view what he's doing at Doge? Because I sense perhaps sometimes an even stronger dislike of him, just in general, than maybe even Trump from the left.
So I used to be in the Navy, and the carrier battle groups had this concept of a missile sponge, like the Oliver Hazard Perry, whose sole job it was to sit there and soak up damage so the carrier, the high-value unit, doesn't get hit. And I think that that's how they've been using Elon Musk, essentially, and it's been working. So I can tell you that Elon Musk came out of the gates at a 52% favorability rating, almost as high as Trump's at the time. And it's dropped now. It's at 45%, and he's underwater by a couple of points. And so it's been working. It was a steady decline. This isn't noise. This is a real signal. But what isn't changing is the overwhelming support for what Doge is doing. So Doge was net plus 11 favorability, which was higher than Trump's. And every single time we ask these questions about, well, do you support cutting the government? Are you angry at the level of waste, fraud, and abuse? Should Social Security be audited? We're getting like 2-to-1 yes signals. 2-to-1 in like what everybody calls like a super politically divided country. No, this is why Trump won.
So why is Doge so
people
understand so high
the
for
government
you?
Overreach?
Right, but I mean, so why is the policy effect high polling, but Musk personally lower than that? What do you attribute that to?
There's a lot of signals that assail people's brains. You know what I mean? Like, everybody says Kamala Harris was a bad candidate, and yet the Democrats, through the establishment media and through Hollywood actors, they convinced 49% of the country to like her. And they still like her. She's got a 48% favorability rating, I think, the last time we asked, and she's the front runner for the Democrats. And so why did Trump win? Well, what has been the trend over and over again is that people don't trust the government, only 30% of them. And this was a referendum on the government. And so people who like Kamala Harris but don't trust the government haven't necessarily been convinced that she's like the problem. And so that's what you're seeing as well. People are being weaponized against Elon Musk, but they're not necessarily tying that to, well, okay, I don't want to see government programs cut. And we'll see where it goes, because I just saw an incredible clip of Jon Stewart being explained why the rural broadband, like, Democrat program got nowhere. And he's like, oh man, bureaucratic government is stupid. And so I think you're going to see a lot of people open up to that. There's this, like, the Democrats are not a solid wall. They're actually a huge rift right now. And so people can have an unfavorable opinion of Elon Musk and still think, well, fraud is bad. Waste is stupid. Yeah. And yes, I want my government audited.
And even Gavin Newsom thinks the Democratic Party is toxic to some degree right now. So you even have a Democrat saying that. Well, Mark Mitchell, head pollster at Rasmussen, thank you so much for your wonderful and brilliant insight today. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks so much, Beau. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, coming up after the break, President Trump is preparing to roll out his reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd, a day he has touted as Liberation Day. I'll be discussing that next. Don't go anywhere. Back to America's Voice Live. I'm Beau Davidson in for Steve Gruber. On Wednesday of this week, President Trump is expected to roll out his trade policy, emphasizing America first and ending U.S. reliance on goods made overseas. President Trump stated that he calls it Liberation Day. The tariffs so far are a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports, a 25% tariff on goods imported from Canada and Mexico, and a 20% tariff on goods from China. Another 25% tariff on all cars imported into the U.S. will also take effect late Wednesday. Now, here with me to discuss this is Congresswoman Erin Houchin of Indiana. Representative Houchin, thank you so much for coming on America's Voice Live today.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Well, Congresswoman, what are your thoughts on President Trump rolling out these tariffs on Wednesday, and what else do you expect to see happen on Wednesday?
Well, this is about fairness for our American companies. For too long, the American taxpayer and American businesses have been ripped off by these other countries who are undercutting us with their trade practices. So I appreciate President Trump's effort to put American companies first. I do expect that we will see a freer and fairer trade system as a result of President Trump's reciprocal tariff plan. And I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that. The bottom line is we have become a consumption country. Once upon a time, the United States was a production country. And over time, we've slowly become more and more of a consumer nation, reliant on cheap goods from countries like China. And we have to get back to that production state. And I do believe that President Trump's plan is going to jumpstart that effort.
Well, Representative, how do you think that Mexico, Canada, and China that you just mentioned might react when these tariffs go active? Do you think that they may retaliate with tariffs of their own? And if so, how much would this impact the American people? Because I'm thinking of what happened with Canada with the electricity situation. Do you expect that these countries will punch back?
Well, tariffs are also part of our national security strategy. We saw that when the president issued tariffs on Canada and Mexico, reference to the border, and him wanting them to send troops to the border as well as stop the flow of fentanyl across our borders. That was effective, but I do expect that they will probably issue some sort of reciprocity. In which case, I think that tariffs are going to be much more painful for Mexico and Canada than they are for the United States. And I think it will ultimately result in a driving down of tariffs across the globe, again, to a freer and fairer trade system that does put America first and is good for American production.
Well, Congressman, what are your thoughts on this 25% tariff on foreign-made cars?
I have heard from several in the automaking industry. I think it's something that we're going to watch, but we've seen announcements from companies like Honda who are bringing some of those jobs back to the United States. So we've never seen a situation in our lifetime where we've had a reciprocal tariff plan. So I'm eager to see that put into play. I will be watching, though, to see if some of the reciprocity takes precedent over some of these other one-off tariffs, because one of the things I think we need to see is some certainty, and reciprocity in our tariff system can give us some of that through some of these initial days.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, these tariffs will no doubt bring in money for America. You alluded to that earlier. And I'm sure that there will be many more tariffs to come. Do you think that President Trump will also be able to eliminate income taxes with these tariffs? Is that possible?
I think that's ultimately the goal. Look, I met with the president several weeks ago over the budget resolution with a group from the House Budget Committee. He spoke with us at that time about his plan for reciprocal tariffs, ultimately said that he wanted to get to this point ultimately. And there's no reason why he shouldn't go ahead and get started on this plan if that's where he essentially wants to be. And if we can give relief to the American taxpayer through this effort, then I'm all for it. But we also have a concurrent plan to make the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent through reconciliation. And if we don't do that at the end of this year, then we will see tax increases across the country. So House Republicans are working hand in hand with the president, trying to get his agenda across the House floor. And we will see, hopefully, some of that come to fruition in the coming months.
I'm curious, Congresswoman, too, does the president say that Americans will have to feel some sense of short-term pain for a long-term gain? I'm sure your constituents probably have concerns about this. How do they explain that sort of situation of what perhaps could be some short-term pinching for what you say is a long-term plan to restore manufacturing, industry here, and American exceptionalism?
one of the things that President Trump said in his joint session to Congress, he did say that farmers in particular might experience some short-term pain. He asked them to stick with him. So far, I think that has held true, that people are sticking with the president on this issue because they believe in his plan to restore this American economy. We have to stop our reliance on being consumers of goods and instead turn to being producers of goods. Ultimately, I think that's what American farmers want to be. That's what people in our districts want to be. We want to be a production nation. And this is the first step to get there. I think they're keeping an open mind, and we certainly on the Hill in Washington are keeping an open mind, but we're watching it very carefully.
Absolutely. Well, Congresswoman Houchin, thank you so much for joining me today on America's Voice Live. We really appreciate you, and we'll be staying tuned to all you're doing in the House.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, coming up after the break, earlier today, we saw First Lady Melania Trump host the International Women of Courage Awards ceremony. And it was a stark difference between what we had to deal with when Jill Biden was First Lady. I'll explain why when we come back. Stay with us. Back to AVL. I'm Beau Davidson, sitting in for the great Steve Gruber. Earlier today, First Lady Melania Trump hosted the 19th International Women of Courage Awards ceremony. This award recognizes women from around the world who have demonstrated exceptional courage, strength, and leadership in advocating for peace, justice, human rights, and the empowerment of women and girls, often at great personal risk and sacrifice. Since the inception of the International Women of Courage Awards in March of 2007, the U.S. Department of State has recognized more than 190 women from 90 different countries. Melania has more of a right to host this ceremony than Jill Biden ever did, especially when considering what Jill and her husband, Joe, did to women's rights and women's sports for 4 long years. Well, here with me now to discuss the stark differences between First Lady Melania Trump and former First Lady Jill Biden is Caitlin Wheeler of the Riley Gaines Center. Welcome to AVL, Caitlin.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're excited as well. Well, Caitlin, this is not Melania Trump's first rodeo, so to speak, since this is her second turn as First Lady. Tell us what you've seen so far from the First Lady, especially in light of her recent memoir release.
Absolutely. No, I mean, what a wonderful first lady we have. I know truly for me, it's a breath of fresh air compared to the last, but really Melania Trump embodies sophistication and class. Not only does she dress really well, personally, I love seeing her outfits. I feel like it's kind of become like a catwalk in some ways, but she's been active in participating in global events. As we mentioned just now, the 2025 International Women of Courage Awards at the State Department ceremony today. During the event, she emphasized that courage is rooted in love, highlighting the bravery of the honorees that received these awards, one of which was Amit Susana, who was held captive by Hamas and was released after 55 days. So truly a stark contrast to the prior Jill Biden, who is none of those things. There's really nothing to compare them in. She stood by while he actively tried to rewrite Title IX, taking away opportunities from women, when she should have been standing up for women. They both should have, and also stood complicit while he was in mental decline and hiding that as well. Truly horrible, not only as a first lady, but as a wife.
Yeah, Caitlin, I found a very interesting juxtaposition with Mrs. Trump speaking at the International Women of Courage Awards today versus 1 year ago when Jill Biden did the same thing. At that time, men were considered women, or at least encouraged to be. I mean, how could Jill Biden speak at an awards ceremony for women if she didn't value what a woman really is?
Well, that's just the thing is they don't even know what a woman is. They can't even define the word woman. And let's look at what her and her husband did during the Biden-Harris reign. They tried to rewrite Title IX. They tried to undermine the very intent of Title IX. The reason why it was established was to protect sex-based opportunities, protecting women's sports, protecting scholarships, roster spots, spots on teams. They actively tried to take away opportunities from women, ignoring over 99% of the population to cater to the less than 1%. We tried to plead and tried to ask them to stand up for women. I was a female athlete. I watched these opportunities be taken away. I had to change in a locker room with a male at our women's NCAA championships. This administration actively worked against women. And truly, it's just heartbreaking. But I'm so thankful for President Trump and Melania and what they're doing. We truly now have real leadership.
It's leadership in action. You know, President Trump signed the No Men and Women's Sports Executive Order in February, which, of course, Riley Gaines was on hand to see and support. What does that executive order do exactly? And is that just a first step of many that need to be taken, would you say?
Yeah, it's obviously a first step. I would define it as that. There's still a lot of battle left to be fought. I personally got to be there at the executive order signing, where he ensured that only females will be allowed to compete in female athletics. He also signed an executive order declaring that there are only two sexes, male and female, which is ridiculous in my mind. That it even has to be done, but it does have to be done. We've seen what's happened with the previous administration and kind of where we are today and why we're having to fight. But again, we're restoring Title IX. He has promised and vowed to protect and stand up for women, protect women's sports, keeping men out of them. Promises made, promises kept. That's exactly what this administration is doing, is fulfilling those promises.
Absolutely. And Caitlin, I got to get your thoughts on Gavin Newsom saying that men should not be competing with women in sports recently. Is that just lip service to try and curry centrist political favor, or do you think he really means it?
Look, he is vying for a presidential candidacy. I really do think he will say and do really anything to earn him that chance. I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. I don't believe that he actually cares about protecting women and women's sports. But, you know, let's test that promise. Let's test what he said and see if he's actually willing to stand up for women. Why not abide by President Trump's executive order, keep men out of women's sports? We know of many cases in the state of California. I myself am working with them through the Riley Gaines Center, people who have reached out in the state who are still having to compete against males and change in the locker room with them. Let's see Gavin Newsom stand up for the women in his state and really the people of his state. We know this is an 80-20 issue. I would argue it's an even more stark contrast there. But let's see him actually follow through with his words and protect women.
Yeah, let's see if he means what he says. I agree with you. Well, Caitlin, thanks so much for joining me today. We really appreciate you and all the great work you're doing at the Riley Gaines Center. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Well, you've seen it before when disaster strikes. Grocery store shelves go empty overnight. The worst time to prepare is during the aftermath. By then, well, it's already too late. Smart Americans trust My Patriot Supply to help them prepare before the crisis comes. And right now, they're making it easier than ever. Order their 4-week emergency food supply today and get a 4 72-hour food kits completely free. That's almost 2 weeks of bonus meals at no cost. Each of these kits offers over 2,000 calories per day of delicious, easy-to-prepare meals that last up to 25 years. Now, that's real peace of mind. No last-minute panic, no empty shelves, just knowing you're covered. Stock up today before this deal disappears, because when an emergency hits, food will be the first thing to go. Just go to mypatriotsupply.com to claim your kit, plus an extra 12 days of food free. Go to mypatriotsupply.com. Now, coming up after the break, more and more news coming out about covering up Joe Biden's mental decline. I'll explain next. Jersey City, New Jersey right there. Welcome back to America's Voice Live. I'm Beau Davidson. More revelations are coming to light when it comes to the behind-the-scenes efforts to shield Biden's struggles from the public. According to the book Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, those close to the former president resorted to increasingly desperate measures to keep his cognitive decline hidden, even from members of his own party. And one particularly awkward exchange reportedly took place with Representative Eric Swalwell. Biden appeared confused, struggling to recognize the congressman, forcing Swalwell to jog his memory in what was described as a painfully uncomfortable moment. Joining me now to discuss this and his new show coming to RAV is the host of Last Call with Mike Crispy, which airs this Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Mike Crispy. Mike, thanks so much for being with me.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, let's start with why the Democrats decided to hide Joe Biden's cognitive decline for so long. Was it just a play, do you think, to keep him propped up just long enough to get him reelected?
Yeah, I think that all along there was a shadow government behind Joe Biden of unelected bureaucrats who were intent on basically ripping our country apart at the seams. And if you had a figurehead like Joe Biden who looked like a white moderate face, you could do so much reckless, far left radical damage. And that is what they wanted to keep up the charade in the public for as long as possible. So, Joe Biden, I believe, didn't know 80% of the things that he was signing or doing. That's obviously, been played out in the public eye with this auto pen situation that's been going on. So I think that this was the chance for the Democrats to really have, mob rule, have the worst of the worst people making decisions for Joe Biden to try to destabilize this country as much as possible. And that 4-year window they had, after 2020 to when they knew Trump would get back in, they're trying to do as much as possible. And they all work together and use Biden as a puppet. It is such a shame. Hopefully it never happens again in the history of our country.
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, Mike, I'm just curious if Biden had stayed in and they didn't poll him and put Kamala in, do you think he would have fared a little bit better polling wise versus Trump? I think Trump would have won either way, but do you think he would have done better than Kamala did or worse?
Well, it's interesting. In my home state of New Jersey, in all of the polling that was done by McLaughlin and Associates leading up to the election, when Joe Biden was put directly against Donald Trump, President Trump was winning New Jersey by 3 or 4 or 5 points. So I believe that Joe Biden was doing absolutely horribly. And Kamala Harris, she got a little bit of the DEI crowd of the Democrats to get a little bit excited. You do those stupid rap concerts with, Megan Thee Stallion or whatever. You try to get some cheap votes that way. I think Trump would have had a landslide either way. I think that Kamala Harris actually did a little bit better because she could actually, be awake for more than 2 hours in a day. So overall, I think that, again, this Joe Biden thing is really something that we should look at as a cautionary tale going forward. You can't nominate somebody who can't stay awake for more than 2 hours or somebody who is, having public appearances and then they're hiding, never taking questions from the press. We need to never allow this to happen again. And Joe Biden, I think, is going to go down in history as really just an absolutely abhorrent, tragic figure that we should all learn from going forward, never to accept.
Yeah, I think it's a tragic tale, and history will not be kind to him. In this book, when they talk about this painful encounter with Eric Swalwell, where he didn't remember who he was, I'm just wondering, do you think if Swalwell had reminded Biden that, I'm the guy who, had flatulence on live TV and the guy who slept with a CCP spy, that might have jogged his memory a little bit better? What do you think, Mike?
Well, maybe he would have been confusing Swalwell for Hunter Biden because the two of them got a lot of stuff in common, a lot of degeneracy going on there. I'm reminded of the time when Joe Biden was giving a speech and he was asking if a person who was dead was in the room. I mean, he's literally asking for this member of Congress, oh, is she here? Is she here? And the woman, unfortunately, had passed away like a decade prior. And then the mainstream media went, oh, well, that's a cheap fake. That's a cheap fake. No, that's called onset late stage dementia and elder abuse. So, I think he might have confused him for Hunter, but either way, the guy did not know what was going on. And I still think he doesn't even know that he was the president, if you want to know the truth.
That's true, and it'll be interesting to see whether these auto pen things actually come to fruition, if the pardons are actually accurate or not. I just think it's so rich, the Democratic Party. I don't see how anyone could trust them again, right? Because they propped up this guy and shielded this for so long, and the media was extremely complicit in this, in hiding his cognitive decline. And now they say, oh, he seemed to have had some problems. Where were you then? I think it's just so, I don't see how the party could be trusted anymore. And maybe, Mike, that's why their party's in such a state of disarray without a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. They haven't had a leader for 4 years. Usually a party has a president or somebody who is the, presumptive leader of the group. Joe Biden wasn't looked as that person by anybody in the Democrat Party. And that's why right now they're a party in shambles. Okay, you have Tim Walz, who's out there doing campaign rallies. And Tim Walz's own son, Gus Walz, was mocking his dad for getting his butt kicked by Donald Trump. So, hey, if Tim Walz is going to be the leader of the party and Jasmine Crockett too, I say bring it on. I want Walz, Crockett, 2028. I think that'll be great for us.
Mike, I think you've already got the right ticket. You need to just brand that on a shirt right away. I think you've got the right idea. Well, Last Call with Mike Crispy is going to be airing Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll make sure that we watch it, and all you out there watching AVL right now, you need to go watch it too. Thank you so much, Mike. And more of America's Voice Live is coming up, so don't go anywhere. We will be right back. And welcome back to America's Voice Live. I'm Beau Davidson, in for the great Steve Gruber. The pro-Hamas Cornell student who sued the Trump administration to block his deportation has self-deported. Mohamedou Tal's visa was revoked for his involvement in anti-Israel campus protest. Tal dramatically posted on X about his voluntary exit after writing, "Long live the student Antifada." He wrote, quote, "Today I took the decision to leave the United States free and with my head held high." After his motion was denied, he voiced his condemnation of the United States online, saying he had, quote, "lost faith that a favorable ruling from the courts would guarantee his personal safety and ability to express my beliefs," end quote. He said that he had lost faith and that he could walk the streets without being, quote, "abducted" or arrested. He added that he was leaving on his own terms. President Trump posted on Truth Social last month that the U.S. is aware of other students at other universities who have engaged in pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, anti-American activity and will continue to find, apprehend, and deport terrorist sympathizers. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told the press Thursday that more than 300 foreign students have had their visas revoked. Here's the secretary now.
I think it's stupid for any country in the world to welcome people into their country that are going to go to your universities as visitors. They're visitors. And say, I'm going to your universities to start a riot. I'm going to your universities to take over a library and harass people. I don't care what movement you're involved in. We do it every day. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visa.
You're saying it could be more than 300
Sure,
visas?
I hope. At some point, I hope we run out because we've gotten rid of all of them.
And Tal chastised the federal government, claiming it has no respect for the judiciary or the rule of law. That being said, he will be able to say this from his homeland. Now, Leah, formerly William Thomas, the transsexual who tied Riley Gaines in the University of Pennsylvania NCAA swim championships in 2022 and received the trophy, is speaking out on men and women's sports. On Saturday, she spoke at a trans youth forum via Zoom, and she said that she remained unmoved and will, quote, keep fighting as much as I am able. She said, quote, in order to fight the battles we need to fight, we have to stick together and support each other, end quote. She said it is up to the athlete to decide where they feel most affirmed and most comfortable and have routes that are safe and non-discriminatory that allow them access to that. Many lawsuits have been filed due to Thomas's participation, and federal funding has been halted to UPenn of $175 million for Title IX violations. Riley Gaines leads a lawsuit, along with several other women, suing the NCAA over its gender identity policy. The New York Times published an Ipsos survey of 2,128 people. 70% of respondents, 69% of whom said they lean left, do not think transgender athletes should be allowed to compete in women's sports. ACLU lawyer Chase Strangio, a transgender lawyer and co-director of the ACLU's LGBT and HIV project, told NPR's Hari Srinivasan of Amanpour & Company there are no men in women's sports. Strangio was born female and transitioned in college at Northeastern University. His legal battles in transition, and these people do not care about women, apparently. And a 70-year-old Meridian, Idaho man, Christopher Talbot, was arrested for aggravated battery after allegedly striking a pro-Trump counter-protester with his vehicle during demonstrations outside a Tesla dealership. The assault took place amid nationwide Tesla takedown protest targeting Elon Musk's support for Trump. Counter-protesters vastly outnumbered the anti-Tesla demonstrators. The victim, a 49-year-old man who arrived in a truck adorned with a pro-Trump flag, had just stepped out when Talbot made an obscene gesture and hit him with his car. Sustaining non-life-threatening injuries, the victim drove himself then to the hospital. Police tracked Talbot down using his license plate and arrested him. This incident highlights the extremes to which the left will go in their outrage over Elon Musk, ignoring the reality of his crackdown on corruption and fraud in the federal government. And SpaceX made history last night with the launch of the first crewed orbit over Earth's north and south poles. The Fram-2 mission, a Falcon 9 rocket, blasted off from Kennedy Space Center at 9:46 p.m., carrying 4 civilian astronauts from 4 nations into a 5-day polar orbit. The Dragon capsule crew included Commander Chun Wang of Malta, Vehicle Commander Janice Mikkelsen of Norway, pilot Rabea Roga of Germany, and Medical Officer Eric Phillips of Australia. The crew entered a 90-degree orbit, making them the first humans to view Earth's poles from space. As the booster landed on a drone ship, the capsule separated, soaring south over Miami and Cuba. Mission Control said, Godspeed, Fram-2, as the crew soared above, able to see both poles. This is SpaceX's 3rd private civilian flight and proves free market innovation pushes humanity upward where governments and government programs fail. Now, there'll be more of America's Voice Live coming up, so don't go anywhere. Stay with us. witnessing a beautiful view of Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, where the home of the Miami Dolphins, where they play. Great team. Welcome back to America's Voice Live. I'm Beau Davidson. Well, it's everyone's favorite time of year. Yes, I say that facetiously. Yes, tax season. And it's imperative that you protect yourself and your family from the IRS if you owe any back taxes or you haven't filed yet. And that's why we here at Real America's Voice recommend going to the experts at Tax Network USA with all of your tax needs. They've helped their clients save over $1 billion in tax debt, and they can help you as well. Here with me to discuss more about their services is Tax Network USA spokesperson Cameron Kenzie. Cameron, thanks for being with me today.
Thanks for having me, Beau.
Well, Cameron, what exactly sets Tax Network USA apart from other tax service providers? What makes it stand out above all the rest, would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, Tax Network USA stands out with its no-nonsense approach to tax relief. I mean, unlike providers who may nickel and dime you, we offer transparency, payment options that are catered to your needs. We have a team of experts who've been battling the IRS for years, and with the government spending under scrutiny from DOJ, you really need a service that's efficient too. And so Tax Network USA doesn't just file your taxes for you. We've delivered results that can save, we've saved real Americans real money in this process. We have a proven track record helping thousands of people avoid the bureaucratic swamp of IRS headaches. So it's a conservative-minded solution, less red tape, and more relief for you.
Yeah, it sounds like people can really feel good about who they're working with, and I think that's important in today's economy. So I guess the big question is how? How does Tax Network USA help clients with tax resolution and IRS issues, especially things like back taxes? How do they help?
Right. I mean, it's a shield for taxpayers facing IRS intimidation during this tax season. And Grant Stinchfield, I went on his show. He raised a really great question about this last time I spoke to him. Returns filed in April do not delay the IRS's efforts. They actually enhance them. But that's really where Tax Network steps in. And we have expert negotiators, think CPAs, think IRS insiders who really know every single trick in the book when it comes to tax code to resolve back taxes, penalties, liens. Just last week, we saw headlines that the IRS was causing delays and causing chaos for these filers. So we really just cut through that mess. We've crafted personalized plans, whether it's slashing debt through an offer and compromise, or setting up affordable payments in this process. Really for conservatives that are tired of government overreach in this process, it's really your way to take back control against the IRS.
So, Cameron, it sounds like this is not one size fits all. You mentioned the word personalization. And I think that's something that probably would make Tax Network USA stand out as opposed to going to any number of the tax services out there. So what is it about that personal level of service that is so unique about Tax Network USA? You alluded to it in the last answer you gave.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we cater our payment plans based on what services that you need. We're flexible in that way. Any case can take several weeks to several months, just depending on the complexity of your case. But like you said, personalized. We've helped people who are retirees, W-2 employees, small business owners, people of large scale businesses as well, just depending on their case, whether they're needing help with filing, whether they're see a looming audit on the rise. So really just whatever you're needing help with, we're able to tackle.
And what's the process like to get started? Is it as simple as a phone call, a simple visit to the website? What's the best way for people to initiate this process?
Yeah, getting started with Tax Network USA, it's really easy and simple. Just as tuning into Real America's Voice, you can pick up the phone. You can call 1-800-905-8000, or you can visit our website. It's tnusa.com/RAV. You'll receive a free consultation in this process. They'll dive into your case, whether it's unpaid taxes or a looming audit. Like I said, they'll give you a game plan pretty fast. So no need to wait, especially with the April 15th deadline. Things are picking up quick. So we recommend you get ahead of it.
You talked also earlier, Cameron, about Elon, and his DOJ is intent on rigorously reviewing various government agency spending practices. How do you think that's going to affect the IRS's behavior towards taxpayers?
Yeah, it definitely has. It's shaking things up. I think it's about time somebody puts the IRS on a leash with reports of layoffs looming. Thousands of IRS jobs could be cut in this process, in this administration, and this scrutiny might force them to ease up on harassing taxpayers. But I wouldn't hold your breath this tax season. A leaner IRS could doubled down, chasing every dime to justify its budget. So Tax Network USA sees this as a wake-up call. Government waste is really under a microscope right now, and taxpayers need protection right now. And for conservatives cheering Doge's mission, this
Absolutely.
could mean
Cameron,
a less
thank
aggressive
you so much.
IRS, but
and
only
just
if we
people
push
need
back.
to go over to tnusa.com. Thank you, Cameron, for joining me. And everyone go to tnusa.com. Well, we'll have more of America's Voice Live tomorrow. Stay with us. I'm Beau Davidson in for Steve Gruber. Stay tuned. We'll see you tomorrow.
America's Voice family.
Are you on Getter yet? No?
What are you waiting for?
It's free.
It's uncensored.
And it's where all the biggest voices in conservative media are speaking out.
Download the Getter app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Getter.
That's right. You can follow all of your favorites. Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Jack Posobiec.
And so many more.
And the best part?
You can watch Real America's Voice right there on Getter.
Live.
So join the conversation.
Hop on the Getter chat room.
Engage with patriots who are just like you.
Good morning, Getter friends.
We're breaking news, we're delivering the truth,
and we're doing it on Getter
every single day.
So don't wait.
Download the Getter app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
It isn't just an app. It isn't just a social media platform. It's a community.
All right, here we go. Came right out to us this time. Yeah, look at that. 12 seconds of the intro, huh? What's going on here, controller? All right, folks, welcome back. Happy Tuesday, April Fool's Day, by the way. I don't know. I'm trying not to be foolish today. We have a fantastic show for you today, starting with Florida's 19th Congressional District Congressman Byron Donalds, who will be running for governor of the state of Florida, this great state, the freest, most amazing state of Florida in 2026. Thank you for joining us, Congressman. Really good to have you, my friend. We'll get to the governor's race in just a second, sir. Can we just weigh in your thoughts on Florida 1 and Florida 6, which are being decided as we speak right now, with Gates's and Mike Walz's seats being replaced? Jimmy Petronis looks like it's a very strong, likely going to be a strong win in Florida 1. Florida 6, your thoughts on both of those, specifically Florida 6?
Well, look, I think Randy Fine in Florida District 6 is going to win. It's really about Republicans turning out to vote. That's where we are right now. Voting returns have been good today. Every Republican, make sure you get to the polls if you live in CD6. At the end of the day, you have Randy Fine, somebody I came into the Florida House with in 2016. Before the interviews, before the speeches, before any of that, Randy Fine was somebody who stood for conservative principles. He fought for the same things that we believe in the America First movement. He is supported by Donald Trump, and he has supported Donald Trump. And he's running against a radical liberal, somebody that Bernie Sanders supports and endorses, somebody the squad wants to see, somebody Hakeem Jeffries wants in Congress. And the entire purpose is to undermine the agenda of Donald Trump. This is not even a close call in Florida Congressional District 6. Make sure you turn out and vote. Vote for Randy Fine. Donald Trump needs every vote possible in the House of Representatives.
Indeed.
And I'm telling you, I've served with Randy. Randy's going to do a great job.
Indeed, I agree with you. And that knucklehead Karl Rove over on Fox saying, well, if he doesn't win by 30, like Trump did in the district, it's showing some sort of weakness in the MAGA effort. That is just nonsense, Karl Rove. I just thought I'd put it, on the line right here. You're welcome to weigh in on that. If you don't want to, sir, we'll move on to your.
I'm a weigh in, and here's why. Because that kind of analysis really is sophomoric. It's not about margins in special elections. It's about victory. Victory is the only thing that matters. We got the Final Four tipping off this weekend. Each number one team made it to the Final Four. You think they're going back and wondering why they only won by 2 points in the case of Florida? I think it was back in the second round, or why they won by 8 points, or whether they won by 20 points. When you're dealing in special elections, it's about victory first, second, and third. So every Republican, especially every elected Republican in our state, the mission is clear. Do everything you can to make sure voters get to the polls so Randy Fine wins in that district. I think he's going to win tonight. I think, quite frankly, it's not going to be close, but it doesn't matter because we don't have a presidential level turnout in special elections. That's not the way you look at this thing. And also the Democrats, obviously, they're motivated because they just got beat down badly in November. So of course they're upset. Of course they're motivated. That doesn't mean we take our eye off the ball. Republicans, get out and vote.
I love that we, I'll do it. I lump Karl Rove in with Democrats because he might, as rhino as he is, he might as well be a Democrat or a liberal. Governor's race, game this out for us. You've been endorsed by Donald Trump. There are others who've been talking about possibly running. Casey DeSantis is one of them. Is Matt Gaetz going to run? Your thoughts on any of this and how this is playing out? From this perspective, it's yours to lose, sir.
Well, look, my focus is on the people of Florida and the policy ideas to take Florida to the next level. We've had great leadership in our state. That's why Florida has gotten to the place that we are in. But now it's time to figure out what are going to be the things that we have to fix going forward. I think the difference between me and some other people who might be thinking about it is I spent 17 years in the financial industry. I don't have to wait for lobbyists or staffers to come and tell me about economic policy and what it means for the future of our state. We have an insurance crisis. We got to fix it. We have transportation issues that we need to make sure we get our hands around because everybody's coming to Florida. It's a wonderful thing, but we need to expand our road structure. Florida should become, and under my governorship, it will become the financial capital of the world. That's going to be the mission set.
I love this.
And then also it's about making sure kids in K-12 education get a world-class education so they are prepared for the leadership roles, the entrepreneurial roles, and the economic roles of leading our state and the country into the future.
I love you making Florida the financial capital of the world. Coming from New York for 40 years, it really should be down here. This is the freest state, the most friendly business environment, certainly of any state I've ever seen. Sir, before I let you go, one of the knuckleheads across the aisle, your counterparts on the Democrat side, is bubbling up a lot, Jasmine Crockett, who had some really awful things to say. No offense. I hope this is all right with you, about yourself and your lovely wife, Erica. Take a listen.
And if we continue to put people into office, and that even means some of our skinfolk who definitely are not our kinfolk, such as Byron Donalds, who are going to continue to say that, the fact that you sitting around talking about life was better under Jim Crow, is this because you don't understand history? Or literally it's because you married a white woman and so you think that whitewashed you. I'm not really sure what it is.
Well,
but
you couldn't even be married to a white woman under Jim
Correct.
Crow.
Correct. And it took Joy to call him out. So I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? What are you saying? He just out here, I feel like they give him his talking points and he's like, yes, master, I got it.
So Congressman, what do you say to a fellow African-American who says you're skin folk but not kinfolk and you shouldn't be in elected office because you married a white woman?
First of all, I'm tired of that BS. First and foremost, it got nothing to do with my wife. Let's just put that right out in the open. They're mad because I'm a conservative Republican and I'm not a Democrat who believes in crazy liberal policy. If I believed in crazy liberal policy, which I do not, then they would be singing my praises. And they wouldn't care that my wife is white. Kamala Harris, her husband's white. Ketanji Brown Jackson, her husband's white. They not say anything about those two dudes or the fact that they married white men because they follow Democratic liberal ideology. Second thing, to Jasmine herself. Jasmine, last year, you and I were supposed to be debating on several different stages. You canceled. I don't know what's going on in your schedule. That's your personal business. But if you want to flush this out, I'm not hard to find. Pick the show, pick the place. I'll be there. I'm unafraid. I basically go anywhere. We do this. Number 3, last and not least. Nobody tells me what to say. I don't use talking points. When somebody asks me a question, you basically know how I feel about it because I'm telling you right then and there. If you're concerned about what my viewpoints are very clear because you could Google me because I know I have plenty of media interviews at this point. So I would just say that back to my colleague from Texas. Don't be concerned about my marriage. Be concerned about the fact that your party lost because your policies are awful. The American people rejected it. And if you want to debate those policy constructs, come find me. We will do it anywhere, any place, anytime.
We're going to leave it right there. I don't think there's a better way to button that segment up. I appreciate your time. Byron Donalds, Congressman from Florida, and potentially the next governor of this great state of Florida. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. My next guest is the current chief financial officer of this great state of Florida, who's running to replace the seat left by U.S. Representative Matt Gaetz in Congressional District Number 1, Florida 1. Welcome, Jimmy Patronis. Jimmy, really good to have you on, my friend. Your returns sound really good. What's the inside scoop? What's your internal polling telling you?
Well, one, I just got a compliment. I love your shirt. That is so awesome. Right now, we're having a successful day. Republicans are showing up to vote. We are outpacing the Democrats. We're expecting somewhere just today, somewhere to the tune of probably about 75,000 votes cast, possibly about 150,000 for the entire election cycle. We're in Pensacola today.
What about Congressional 6? Randy Fine, how's he doing? A lot of, I talked to Congressman Donalds. Karl Rove is claiming that if you don't win by 37, where Trump won by 37 in your district, or 30 in Florida 6, where he won by 30, if Randy Define doesn't, even if he wins, it's going to be some sort of loss to a rhino like Karl Rove. What do you say to those folks?
Look, the Democrats in this race in Northwest Florida, I'm going to be outspent 6-1. Randy's going to probably be outspent 8-1. So when you're spending that much money, you're going to have a challenge getting the type of voter engagement you'd like to have. And I tell people, elections have seasons, and the season to vote is in November, not in April. On top of it, it's April Fool's Day. So people are focused on other things. There's a lot of people still on spring break right now. So they'll be not as much of a showing as is a typical cycle, but Randy, not to make a joke, Randy's going to do just fine.
Yep. Bigger picture. You're going to win. Looks like you're going to win handily. Lock it down. What are you bringing to Congress, Jimmy? Because I've known you a long time. You're one of the smartest, most shrewd financial people. Probably you will be in Congress as well. I love when you said to the woke folks over at BlackRock and whatnot, you're not going to be welcome in the state of Florida in our pension funds if you continue the woke garbage, and it really worked. Tell us what you're going to bring to Congress.
Yeah, my dad always said, if you want to get somebody's attention, you get into their pocketbook. So the great thing about it is we've seen some momentum. You've seen companies abandon